we're recording this, it's the day after the Grammys. And finally, uh 25, 26, however, almost 30 years after it probably should have happened to begin with, Nas finally won a Grammy. Nas, the arguable greatest of all time, depending on who you ask, and he's there in any conversation, in any real hip hop conversation, he's in that conversation for greatest of all time. Did not have a Grammy before last night, which is crazy to think about. We'll get into all that in a second, but I just want to say, like, I don't feel like this got enough attention. I feel like the Nas fans and the true hip hop fans like really like yeah they were celebratory for this, but a lot of people did also were like, oh, but Freddie Gibbs got robbed. Happy for Nas, but Freddie Gibbs got robbed. We both love Freddie Gibbs up here, and I was early. I was one of the early ones
Hmm.
listening to his mixtapes and Pinata, and I was around when ESGN dropped. Like I box frame Cadillac music, the whole thing. I didn't think Alfredo was better than King's Disease, respectfully. I did not, but a lot of people did. But that's not what this is about. I just think in general, like we're not talking enough about how historical this is, how late this is, and I think this is why a lot of Nas fans get pissed because they feel like he doesn't sort of get that respect. Like it was announced before the Grammys even started. I didn't see anything on like the IG. By the time the Grammys were going about it, I didn't see much on Twitter outside of the outlets covering it, Complex, Double XL, hip hop sites, et cetera, Mass Appeal, obviously. And I didn't see a lot just sort of marveling at like, yo, like this finally happened. And this is why I think Nas fans get pissed because when other artists who are more famous sort of get these accolades and even get lesser accolades, regardless of how historic they are, whatever the case may be, it's just received differently. It's kind of like I feel like King's Disease is almost like slept on in terms of just being really underrated. It was a great Static Selector pointed this out in a tweet, and I kind of agree. Like this was in terms of albums, this was one of the best classes in a while in terms of the albums that got nominated for the
I,
Grammys.
I would agree with that in terms of I actually think for the most part the Grammys they usually fuck this up. This in terms of a class wasn't, and they fuck up who usually wins the award too. But just in terms of the nominees, this
Yeah,
wasn't bad. I mean, I think what is it? I don't know, it's 3 or 5 or 4 or 5 of the top nominees were in Bryan and I's top 10 of the year in terms of
hmm
hip hop album of the year, right? So we a good amount of them that we had chosen, we talked about whether it was D Smoke's album, King's Disease, Alfredo. So
the
they
other
were,
two was Royce the 5'9", the Allegory was the other one, and Jay Electronica's
yeah.
mainly collaboration
Did
with
it
Jay Z.
didn't make
Dre
you
Electronica
right?
album.
Didn't make either of our top tens, but they were up there in some of the better works of the year. So this was
Yeah.
not a bad field. I agree with Stat on that. It
And I was
wasn't,
glad to see Royce there because he should have been up there for Book of Ryan,
which is
but
crazy. I
that's
feel
another
like
story.
this. Yeah, I don't think Allegory is anywhere near as good as Book of Rhyme, but this was the one that they were like, all right, we didn't give you this time, Royce. Now we're gonna give you some love.
And,
So yeah.
and that's the crazy thing. And just before I turn this over to you completely to give your thoughts on this, and one of the things that I said was like, I'm ve- I'm I'm very happy for Nas that this finally happened. I also want to acknowledge that King's Disease winning Best Rap Album is crazy because we both thought it was the best album that came out in 2020. Neither of us have it as like a top five Nas album, as good as the album is, and I think it's a very good album. But that speaks to more again his discography and how elite it is when you're talking about Illmatic, Stillmatic, The Lost Tapes, God's Son, etc., etc., and King's Disease now, and then you're looking at like how the Grammys sort of didn't give him the Grammy for Illmatic, even though like I don't even think Illmatic was nominated because he wasn't that known yet. It was written, I Am were both nominated. Like one Mike was like up there for best performance or whatever the case may be. And it's like all these different moments of his career, and it's crazy to think that he never won a Grammy. And you have other dudes who have who obviously don't have the sort of longevity. It's why I think like mainstream awards don't really matter. The independent stuff, that stuff is a little bit different because it's a little more about the art form. That's why you and I, Dexter, we celebrate when we get certain nominations and wins and first place for best sports film, La Cultura, best short film, period, at the Global Independent Film Awards. Like that stuff sort of matters, but we know that if we were to put that at like, one of these big award shows or whatever. It's a popularity contest at the end of the day. And I think this is why a lot of Nas fans get pissed, because he's never been the most popular one. But like the reality is like, yo, he's arguably the nicest ever. He finally got his Grammy, and I think that we should, celebrate that, even though we sort of side eye the Grammys in general. And I'm sure Nas, like, I don't know how much he actually cares, but I'm glad that we could finally call him a Grammy award winning artist.
I'm happy that we can too. I'm not sure how much he really cares. I think Nas knows where he stands in the hip hop pantheon, being one of the greats, if not the greatest. He had 14 nominations for best overall the Grammys
I'm glad you
without a
pulled this up. Let's go through it.
without a win. Do you know who now? And this you'll understand why I always say the Grammys sometimes mess this up. Now the person with the was the group now with the most nominations in
I know
terms of
the
hip
answer.
hop without a win is the Roots.
The
The
Roots, yeah, I
Roots
do.
now have 5
That's crazy
nominations. It's
too.
crazy. The Roots have a, and I will argue for anybody not to take this off of Nas. Some of the Roots' best work in their career has probably come 2005 post. I think they have 2 classic albums in that time, in Game Theory and Undone. And
How I
neither,
got over, I
and
would say.
How I Got Over that was also Grammy nominated and did not win. And I thought a year it definitely should have won. They did not win. Now let's look at this, because to look at this and really have this conversation and the points that Bryan is bringing up, all of which I agree with you, is you have to look at, all right, well, when could Nas have actually won?
So I want you to go through the list
Yes.
of, because here's the thing about his career also. Like, and you could do this with the greats. Like, there are other parts, songs, albums, whatever, that didn't get nominated, period,
Mm-hmm.
that should have been in the field. And it's like, I'm actually shocked that he only had 14 nominations. You know what
Right.
I mean? In totality. Like, that's the other shocking thing. Like, I remember years where there were dudes getting like 7, 8 nominations. And it's like, I remember Nas being great my entire life. So I want you to go through some of
Right.
them.
All right.
Please.
Let's do this. So not technically Nas had no chance. It couldn't get the Elmatic couldn't get the mainstream recognition that it deserved because there was no award. Fine. Neither could have Ready to Die. Fine. But here let's look at 1997, and that's important because it was written. Comes
Yeah.
out in '96. I think for many people in hip hop would have called that one of the stronger hip hop albums of that year. That album was not nominated. If you look at the other, now the album that won, I have no qualms with what won that year, was The Score by the Fugees. No qualms with that at all. Back to back, big singles, radio friendly, and most importantly, white people loved it. And I love the Fugees. I love me some more. But that's really what matters here, right? Who had the crossover appeal? Tupac was nominated again that year for All Eyes on Me. A Tribe Called Quest beat Rhymes in Life, which most Tribe fans like myself will probably say that's on the weaker of their albums, not as good as their first two. Coolio, Gangsta's Paradise, an album probably nobody plays, but everybody loves the song Gangsta's Paradise, especially, as I said, white people. And LL Cool J, Mr. Smith, I would actually say an underrated LL album. Nas, not mentioned. Already at this point in the game, and this is why I'm taking Bryan back, because I could see how Bryan's perspective on this might be a little bit young. And as he says, all he's known is Nas being great as he's grown up. Nas isn't mentioned, and he's already established after 2 albums at this time. He is one of the greats in the game. Another notable omission from the 1997 Grammys that people should know: No Reasonable Doubt. Reasonable Doubt is not here. Now, we also know Reasonable Doubt was not given its 5 mic status and didn't have great commercial success. The Grammys has always been linked to commercial success.
The point is that, like,
Yes.
there are so many, and then we didn't even look at songs. There are individual songs, like I mentioned, One Mic was nominated for best performance or
And
best rap
and
performance or
did
whatever,
and did not win. Did
which
not
is
win.
crazy to me. I think that, like, that I remember that song. It's one of those things that I remember it being more revered when I was younger, and now a lot's happened since then in terms of like a lot of other great songs have come out or whatever. Even Nas has put out like great music since then. But I'm like, yo, One Mic is one of the best hip hop records I've ever fucking heard. Period. And
I
it doesn't make sense to me. Like, we don't really think of it in that way. I feel like collectively.
I stopped caring about the Grammys probably after 2014. when Kendrick did not win for Good Kid, Mad City.
Oh, it happened for me before
I
that.
mean, it
In
probably was before me
09,
for
oh
that.
09, 10, I was like, oh,
It probably was
those
before
are
me for
terrible
that.
years in hip hop.
There was a couple years with the Roots, like 2011 or 2010, they didn't get nominated, and they didn't win for Game Theory. That was annoyed.
Did
And
not Nas get nominated for Life Is Good? I think
he
he did.
did, and he did not win. He
What was
lost
the
to
field that year?
who won that year?
Yeah. No, what was the field? It was not. It was.
Oh, the field was all right. It was Undone by the Roots.
Okay.
Rick Ross, God Forgives I Don't. Nas, Life Is Good. Lupe's Food and Liquor 2. 2 Chainz Based on a True Story. And the winner, Drake for Take Care.
Nas should have won that category.
I thought it was between the Nas and Roots. I think the Roots had the better album, but I wouldn't have been mad if Nas won. The point, like we're overall saying, is look, this has been a popularity contest. We saw Kendrick not win and lose to Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, which is that's an all-time great hip hop album that everybody's dying to go back and listen to. I've actually listened to the album. The album's not trash or anything. I'm not saying that. The album's actually solid. The Heist by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis. It's a solid listen, but it had
him getting the award was a fucking heist.
I would happen to agree with that. But look, with all this being said, to put a bow on this, I haven't cared about this for a long time. I'm glad to see Nas get his flowers, and I understood obviously why he couldn't with Illmatic. He probably got overlooked. It was written. There's nominations that Nas actually should have had that he hasn't gotten. That we could talk about that. I do not think that this award being handed to him, and this is something I want to be clear about. Some people are going to act like it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. I don't think this is what it is. It may feel like that in a way, but this is an award because he actually put out the best album last year. Like, he actually put out the best album last year. It was the tightest album. It was the best album in terms of rap with production, and it was. I'm sorry. I like Alfredo Freddie Gibbs. I think I had that 4 or 5. I think I had it 4 in my top 10. Really good album. But this was the best album last year, and Nas did it. And to do it at his age in a genre that's driven by youth generally, and sometimes foolishly, this is absolutely impressive. So
With Hit Boy, by the way.
With Hit Boy, salute to Nas.
A collaboration that a lot of us were kind of like, huh? How's that going to sound like? And Hit Boy's been the best producer on planet Earth since that album came out.
And look, man, it's greatness. Salute to Nas. It ain't hard to tell who's got the best rap album in 2021. That is Nasir Jones. Put some respect on his name.